More twists and turns at the top of the Championship with a few teams nearer to the bottom who might start to get a little bit concerned. Here's my roundup of round 18. Starting on Friday night, it was a cracker down at Bramall Lane as Sheffield United come out on the end of a narrow victory beating Sunderland by 1-0. A tale of 2 red cards, really, for the majority of this game. Sunderland going down to 10 men via a Chris Mepham last man challenge that was deemed to be a red, which I think I agree with. And then equally, John Souttar getting a silly second yellow card just on the end of the first half. Another red card that I thought was justified. So we go into the second half 10v10, and it was a case of who could find a way to win. And as I've mentioned many times in recent roundups, and I've said this numerous times, the top teams find a way to win. And despite being by far second best throughout the whole game, Sheffield United somehow found a way to win via a Tom Davies winner with only 7 or so minutes to go. Sunderland, I thought, were well worth at least a point here. I think for them to have not come away with at least a point is a sickener, really. I thought they were the better team for the most part. The way they set up to combat this Sheffield United side, I thought was absolutely bang on. But I guess what we've sort of seen in Sunderland's underlying numbers throughout the season so far, and the fact they've been overperforming their XG, scoring more goals than maybe they should have been, it's starting to show now because they had really good opportunities in this game where they were in really good goal-scoring positions and they failed to convert. They missed a penalty as well through Patrick Roberts. I think we're starting to see Sunderland level out well and truly now, and they're just not quite firing as much as they are in the final third as they have been. They're still a very good side, a very enjoyable side to watch, very slick, very threatening, but they're not putting the ball in the back of the net anymore, and that's kind of been coming if you looked at their numbers. But as I say, Sheffield United continue to find a way to win. They're now top of the league by a few points, 8 home wins in 9 for the Blades, conceding only twice at Bramall Lane all season, and that was in the same game against QPR. So another brilliant run. The best teams always find a way. Sheffield United managed to do that. Sunderland, I don't think, can be too down on the performance, but it is now 6 without a win, 5 of them draws, and they are now starting to drop well away from the top 2 and into the chasing pack. Boro 3, Hull 1. As always, I did a full review of this game myself in my Project Boro reviewing series, but this was better from Boro. This is what happens when our key men are back in the team. Hayden Hackney, Finn Azaz, and they proved to be the difference. In a game that I thought was very well contested, I thought Hull come to the Riverside and tried to play football, and I respect them for that. It was clear, though, that they were lacking in the final third, which I think is something you can kind of see from Hull City all season, but they certainly looked like they had a bit of freedom, a new lease of life now that Tim Volta was out the door. I kind of felt that while watching them, and especially at 2-1, there was a shift in the game where Hull looked like they were the ones who were going to score next and get that equaliser, but Boro were able to pull away from them with a Tommy Conway brace. He's now got the second best goals per 90 in the Championship, which for a player who's only started 8 games is quite astonishing. So it's great that Boro have got the attacking options that we do, and of course Finn Azaz with another moment of absolute quality to get us going. So I think Hull can certainly take promise from this performance. It is 5 defeats in a row for them, and their new manager is desperately needed. Well, the decision, it not only does it need to be made, it needs to be spot on as well. But I think if it is, I saw enough here to see that Hull will move away from trouble and will get going in the right direction. Boro, though, ensure that the Blackburn defeat is nothing other than a blip. They've now won 4 in 5, scoring 18 goals in that period. So Boro back on track with some monster games coming up. Oxford 1, Millwall 1, a late Goodrum screamer, which he does, got Oxford a point in this game, and I think on the balance it's what they deserved. I think they'd have felt very hard done by had they not come away with something from this game. I think looking at the stats, looking at the highlights, it was a very equal game. Both teams had chances to win it, but it's a point Oxford warranted, point Oxford deserved. And although they're still only 1 win in 13, I think it was important for them to not lose another game at the Kazam. I think it was important that, as they have been all season, they were pretty competitive in this game against the Millwall side, who, let's not forget, have took some huge scalps this season and only a few weeks ago were right up in the playoff places. So Oxford, I think they're picking up points still. I don't know if it's quite enough. I would like to see them pick up a few more wins over the next run just to get them a little bit further away from the drop zone, which they are sort of hovering above now. Millwall are starting to slip away from the top 6 as well. They're still unbeaten in 9, but they've drawn 3 in a row, and they, a bit like Oxford at the other end, need to start turning these draws into wins. Watford 0, QPR 0. A very well-deserved point from QPR, I would say. I looked at the highlights and I think it was more than obvious what QPR's problem is, and that's scoring goals. Some of the chances they had in this game were absolutely glorious. And only one shot on target from 16 total shots tells you all you need to know, really, by the accuracy of the QPR shots. They hit the post late on as well, but I think it's good to at least see them creating chances. If they weren't, that would be an even bigger problem. It's now just finding a way of finishing them, but I think they can take positives by the fact that they've gone to Watford, a place where most teams have come away with absolutely nothing this season, and they've come away with a point. I think they're only the second team to come away with anything from the Vic so far, so big positives for QPR, and beaten in 3 now, 2 clean sheets. They have started to stop the goals going in their own net, at least. They now just need to find a way of getting them going in the opposition's instead. So slight progress. I think maybe Sheff Utd has survived just enough to maybe start turning a corner slightly, although there's still a lot of work to do there. But for Watford, they haven't lost again. You know, their unbeaten run at the Vic now is still a fantastic one. It's still a great record. But I think they would like to be winning these sort of games at home to teams who have been down the bottom of the league, struggling. It could come at a point at the end of the season where if Watford fall just short, this could be one of them games they look back on and go, that was one we should have won. That's one that could have made the difference. So nothing to overly worry about for Watford, but I think this is a game they would have liked to be winning in hindsight. Blackburn 1, Leeds 0. What a week for Blackburn Rovers. They've won 3 in a row. They've went to Boro. They've won. They've beaten Leeds, which not many teams have done so far this season. It's Leeds' only second defeat in 13 games. The positive for Leeds, I guess, is that they've only lost 3 in that time, as I say, and they've all been only by 1-0. So the defeats have been extremely narrow for Leeds. They're not conceding many. They're not getting battered by anybody. They're in every single game. I think they need to just do what they've done in a lot of their previous defeats, put it behind them, and then go on a good run again. Treat it as a blip and nothing more. So not too much to be concerned by, but Blackburn have had an outstanding week. I mean, now you've got to consider them right in the playoff fight once again. You know, they had a really hot start, then they've fallen off. They've picked up form again, 3 wins in a row. What I will say, though, Blackburn have the tendency to be a streaky team. So as good as this run is that they're on, they can equally go on one where they're winless in 5, 6, 7 games. So Leeds, a blip. For Blackburn, it's all about whether they can make this a consistent run of form or not. Bristol City 4, Plymouth Argyle 0. Deary me, another away trip. Let me just say I feel so sorry for the Plymouth fans. I mean, having to travel absolutely hundreds of miles every single away game for your team to not even turn up and get hammered time and time again must be so difficult to take. And this was another one. They must dread every time an away fixture comes around the corner for Plymouth. I mean, 4-0, quite frankly, flattered them. Bristol City had so many opportunities, 24 shots, 12 on target to Plymouth's 4 with only 2 on target. They must have an XG of 0.14, did Plymouth. I mean, it's not even like they're competing on the road. If they're competing and being edged out because of the home side having a little bit more quality or home advantage proving the difference, then fair enough, but they're not even competing. They've lost their last 2 away games at an aggregate score of 10-1. And they've lost 8 from 10 on the road all season, scoring 3, conceding 27. I say this time and time again, they cannot rely on their home form to simply keep them in the league, because there is absolutely no chance, unless we see one of the most glorious turnarounds ever seen, that their away form is going to offer anything this season. I mean, it can't be that they're just a completely different team setup-wise away from them. It must be a mentality thing. It must be a confidence thing. Their inability to prevent the opposition from creating big chances is such a problem. And you've had Norwich put 6 past them, Bristol City put 4 past them. Again, home form is what will have to keep Plymouth up, but that puts them under such pressure. And I have saw a few tweets today that say Wayne Rooney might already be fighting for his job, so is he now going to be a major risk? And from the results, you can't really be surprised as to why. Bristol City, though, not much else to say about them. This is a game they should be winning, and they won it really well. Coventry 2, Cardiff 2. Frank Lampard's first game as Coventry boss ends in a draw, and it was just a draw, rescued by an 89th minute penalty by Victor Torp. I think looking at the numbers, Coventry were the better side here. They created more, they had more XG, they looked like they had the better chances, but still, they're just conceding too many goals. You know, they've had 5 games without a win now, Coventry. They've conceded twice in each of them, meaning they've conceded 10 in their last 5, and they're now winless in that time as well, as I say. So I'm not going to judge Coventry too much at this point. You know, they've gone through a bit of a sticky spell, a transition from one manager to the other. It's the start of a new era. It's all whether Frank Lampard can get the team moving in the right direction at this moment in time, because they're not really moving anywhere at this point. Cardiff, I think it's a good point on the road. Their run of form still isn't all that great. They're now hovering over the drop zone as well, and I think they'll be kicking themselves that they dropped 2 points so late on in the game. And they're winless in 5-2, and they're not yet to make a decision on their new manager either. So 2 teams very much in a transition period, needing stability and maybe needing a bit of a fresh start. Norwich 4, Luton 2. Goals, and more goals at Carrow Road. Norwich have scored 10 in their last 2 home games, albeit they were against the 2 teams with the worst defences in the Championship. That's right, Luton Town have the second worst defence in the whole league. They're a team who've just come down from the Premier League, and they have a second worst defence, only worst by Plymouth, who've conceded 38. For Luton to have such a shocking away record is absolutely crazy. And you look at some of the teams they've gone to in recent times, they're teams they should be looking to compete with. They went to Leeds, they went to Norwich, they went to Boro, and they've conceded 12 goals in them 3 games. That is just nowhere near good enough. If you're wanting to improve on where they are, and at least get anywhere near competing with these teams, you can't be shipping as many goals as they are on the road. I mean, it is just an incredibly worrying trend, and if they're going to keep conceding this many goals, they're going to have to score a ridiculous number just to even out the results and get them moving in any sort of positive direction. So Luton are only going to either stagnate where they are or go backwards, and that really, really worries me. With Luton Town, there's no consistency. You know, they got a 1-0 win over Hull the other week. They weren't great in that game, and as always, they just can't back it up. Every time they get a win, they'll fail to win the next. They'll lose 1 or 2. They'll go on a winless run. It's either going to even out, and they're going to finish lower mid-table, and maybe rely on there being 3 absolutely appalling teams worse than them in the Championship, or if the teams below them pick up form, they might actually slip into some perilous danger. And that's why I'm still astonished by the fact Rob Edwards is still there. But I have seen reports that because he's just signed a new deal, his compensation package and the number they'd have to pay him off is astounding. So that's a real cock-up, I guess, from the Luton hierarchy. They've committed to a manager who's, well, not delivering at the moment. So Luton are in a really, really tough, perilous position, and things have simply got to improve. But Norwich have turned a corner once again. They're firing at home, albeit against the 2 worst defences in the league. They're playing some really lovely football, and I think it's firing them back in towards the playoff mix. Preston 1, West Brom 1. What a surprise that West Bromwich Albion have drawn a football match. Who'd have thought it? Who'd have thought that West Brom have drawn again? And who'd have thought Preston have drawn again? Preston have drawn 4 of their last 5, but get this, West Brom have drawn 9 of their last 10. I have never seen a record like it, and it's all completely perspective based. You either boot off that you're not winning games, dropping points every week and slipping and sliding further away from the top 6, or you see it as an unbeaten run where your team is failing to lose games and just have to turn a few of these chances into goals, and they'd edge out a lot of these draws and they might have turned into wins, and it suddenly looks so different. But it's a tough one for West Brom. I've seen fans start to lose patience with Carlos Corberán. I still don't think there's many managers out there who they'd be able to get who'd be better than him. They just have to find a way of getting out of this sticky run of form and converting these draws into wins, because it is seriously costing them at the moment. And same for Preston, really. They're drawing too many games. more than they probably like as well. And at the other end of the table, that's maybe preventing them from getting themselves away from danger. So, yeah, a predictable draw from two very, very predictably mediocre teams at this moment in time, and a result that didn't really help either of them. Stoke 0, Burnley 2. Burnley's incredible run continues, and not only is it 4 wins in a row for Burnley, it's 11 clean sheets this season, or maybe 12, and they've only conceded 6 goals in 18 games. 6 in 18. That's 1 in every 3. A stupidly ridiculous defensive record, and the scary thing is they're starting to get better offensively. They're starting to create more. Their XG's going up, and pairing that with such a solid defence, the results are pretty ominous for Burnley. And as I keep saying, they only have to score 1 goal to win, but they're scoring more than 1 goal to win here. Rodriguez with the first, Brownhill with a penalty to make it 2-0, and Stoke are just another team who you can add to the long list who failed to breach this Burnley team. So it's no real disrespect to Stoke City. It's not a game they'd probably expect to, and I don't think many will beat Burnley at this moment in time. So Stoke need to just brush this one off as a team who've come here in hot form, who do not concede goals. But it puts Burnley up to second now. And honestly, with the form they're on alongside Sheffield United, I don't see who stops either of them. Swansea 2, Pompey 2. A tough one for Pompey this. I mean, firstly, it was their first game in 3 weeks, which is absolutely astounding. So I'm just happy that this game went on. But it's a tough one because there's 2 ways of looking at this. The first is that they've come away from Swansea with a point, which not many teams will. I always see Swansea as a rather difficult place to go. They did take the lead. They were 2-0 up, pretty much near it enough at half-time. But they bottled the 2-0 lead and dropped 2 points. And it come very quickly. You know, they were only 2-0 up for a few minutes before they were pegged back to 2-1. And it only took a few minutes, 9 minutes into the second half before Swansea drew level. And then you look at the chances that Swansea had, completely dominated with a number of chances they had. The highlights I saw, they missed some absolute sitters. 22 shots to Portsmouth 6. 6 shots on target to Portsmouth 4. More than double their XG. I think Pompey maybe need to look at this as a point that they should just be glad they've got, because yep, they dropped the 2-0 lead, but they quite easily could have lost this game on the balance of play. So they've come away from a place that's quite difficult with a team that have missed a ton of really good chances, and they've come away with a point. And at the minute where they are in the table, every point matters. So I think Swansea will see this as definitely 2 points drop, despite coming from behind. If I'm Pompey, I know it's tough when you've led 2-0. I'd see it as a pretty good point gained. And finally, Derby 1, Sheffield Wednesday 2. A sickener for Derby, conceding a 94th minute winner, having led for the majority of the game. And it's another defeat at home for Derby, which is a bit of a worry. You know, I pair them with Oxford, although Derby is still above Oxford in the table, but they're 2 teams who, for a lot of the early Roundup videos, I was saying their home form is keeping them propped up. Their away form was always a little bit disappointing. Derby have now lost 2 home games in a row, winless in 4. I wouldn't say things are getting too worrying down at Pride Park, but they just have to be a little bit careful they don't slowly sleepwalk into something a little bit more dangerous. So they just need to be careful and get back to winning ways, especially at home, get the good feel back there. But Sheffield Wednesday have now won 3 in 5, losing only to their rivals in that time. And to be fair, in the Steel City derby, they were more than competitive and were just edged out on the day. So maybe we're starting to see a bit of consistency from the Sheffield Wednesday team. Maybe they're finally starting to string some good results together. I still don't think they've got enough to challenge the playoffs, but it might mean that they don't fall into any trouble. So look then at the league table as we round up round 18, and Sheffield United lead the way, and they are now in the top 2 by 3 points ahead of Leeds United. And again, I know it's irrelevant because they broke the rules, etc., but they're a team who should be on 40 points, and I think if they were, it would make them just look even more ridiculously dominant. But them and Burnley at the moment just look like they've gone into another gear and just look unstoppable. I think Leeds are still right there with them as a standout top 3. They, as I say, just need to make sure that this defeat isn't a blip. I still think they'll be more than good enough to stay up there. And then the chasing pack, I think, will start to falter. I think Sunderland and Boro, I think, will still both hover in them playoff places. I just don't see enough from either that they're going to maintain pace with the top 3. I think there is a distinct top 3 now, and Sunderland and Boro might well be playoff mainstays. But then again, you know, Sunderland need to be careful they don't keep slipping and sliding. West Brom are only 5 points behind them now, and Watford are only 3, so they need to be careful that this slide doesn't continue. But Watford joined Boro and Sunderland in the playoffs. West Brom just outside alongside Blackburn, who, as I say, have got themselves right back in the mix. Don't forget, Blackburn have a game in hand, so if they were to win that, they'd go up to 5th, which, took me by surprise. So Blackburn and Norwich starting to work their way back in now. Millwall falling away ever so slightly. The rest I'd sort of see as still mid-table sides at this point in time. And then there's a few down towards the bottom who I think need to be very, very careful. Pompey, of course. It's tough to judge with them having 2 games in hand. They are 4 points adrift, but they do have that slight advantage with the games they still need to play. QPR are clawing their way back towards safety, which credit to them. They're only 2 points off Plymouth. I think it all depends on who their new manager is and how quickly he can get them going. The teams I would be very, very worried about, one is Plymouth, who look like they're on a one-way trip sliding in to the bottom 3. Cardiff potentially, but Luton are one who I think need to be especially careful, because with the goals they're conceding, they've lost more games than anybody in the league this season. That will inevitably cause them to slide closer and closer to the drop unless they make a change. So there's a few teams down there who I think just need to be incredibly wary of what is happening below them. You could say the same for Preston, maybe Oxford, maybe even Derby as well. We'll have to wait and see. But that's my roundup of round 18, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Roll your thoughts on your team. And as always, like the video if you've enjoyed it, subscribe for more. We round up every week of Championship fixtures. I might have time to predict this weekend's round as well, given the fact that there's no midweek game. So I might do a prediction video for the upcoming round as well on maybe Wednesday or Thursday this week. So subscribe if you want to see all that good stuff. But until next time, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all in the next one.